We'll be joined by Eric Roth now. He's president and CEO of Capella Minerals, and we interviewed Eric before on SF Live, and I'm quite excited to have him back here on SF Online to give us an update of what is happening in Sweden, and they have some assets in Canada as well. So we are going north. Eric, thanks for coming on SF Online.
Yeah, thanks, Guy, and thanks for the introduction, and big welcome to your listeners as well, too. So I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. And as you mentioned, look, we did chat a few months ago about, the work that we've been doing in Norway and Sweden, and I'll step people through that right now, so that we can see where we've come from and where we will be going through in 2021. So if I just look at the company at the big picture, so for those who have been following the company know that we have a portfolio of 5 projects overall. So we have 3 gold projects, 2 of which are in Canada, which I won't talk about today because they are joint venture projects, but nevertheless, they are within our stable of projects. But what we will focus on today, Kai, is the Scandinavian assets. And this is a portfolio of projects that we acquired from EMX Royalty late last year. It includes 3 projects: the Southern Gold Line, which is a gold project, obviously, in northern Sweden. And we also have 2 high-grade copper projects in Norway. And what I'll do is I'll step you through those in a moment, just in more detail. But I guess just to set the big picture, the Southern Gold Line is actually in a very well mineralized gold belt in northern Sweden. So some of your listeners might be aware of the biggest deposit so far known in that belt is Barsele, which I believe there'll be a presentation on a bit later on. And of course, the other 2 known deposits in the belt are Sullide and Favourable, which basically are owned by Dragon Mining. So here we have this very large belt with known multi-million ounce deposits in it, and lots of sort of basically underexplored. I mean, there hasn't been any real systematic exploration throughout this belt. And, we see great potential here for adding new ounces and discoveries in the southern part of that belt. And particularly, and just to sort of set the framework, just to the north of us, there is the Boliden copper belt, just so that people know sort of where we sit. We're very close to the regional center of Skellefteå. But probably the real star, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, the gold project is fantastic, but I think we've been very lucky, very fortunate to get hold of these 2 high-grade copper projects in Norway. And for your listeners, Kai, many people forgot that Norway was a very significant copper producer for hundreds and hundreds of years. And most of these mines just shut down in the mid-80s for 2 reasons. And 2 things happened in Norway at the time. One, of course, was the discovery of oil, which generated so much income for the country that people just, literally forgot about the mining industry. But the second thing, of course, that happened in the mid-80s was that copper prices dropped to about 60 cents a pound. So these underground operations at those prices did not generate a lot of cash flow. But here we are 40 years later. These are former mining districts. You've still got possibilities of extensions to the old mines, plus lots of satellite deposits that haven't been worked up. And therein lies the potential for us. It really is an extraordinary opportunity for us to have been able to get into districts like this, and both in the case of Løkken and also Sullide. And also just worth mentioning that Løkken was actually the biggest massive sulfide deposit of its class discovered anywhere. It produced about 24 million tons at 2.3% copper, 1.9% zinc, with gold and silver credits too. So these are very rich, high dollar per ton deposits. They were in their day. And as exploration targets, they still are for us in 2021 and going forward. Just quickly on the capital structure, so just so that people realize, so right now Capella, it's a 15 million market cap company. That's 15 million Canadian. So it's a very cheap entry point, I think, for the quality of projects that we have in the portfolio. The biggest shareholders at the moment, about 50% of the company shares are held between 4 groups of people. Our largest shareholder is a group out of Austria called Frucht Express. They basically bought in on market since November, just essentially on the strength of the Norwegian copper projects. But as well, we have other major shareholders in terms of corporates. We have Sandstorm, EMX Royalty, and management also has about 10%. One of the things I will also mention too, Kai, is that in our back pocket, we do have marketable securities of other companies, and these all came from deals that we did in 2020. So we also have a shareholding in Cerrado Gold, which has some projects in Argentina and Brazil. And we also have a shareholding in a company called Ethos Gold, which came out of our Savant Lake joint venture in Canada. So, so those are marketable securities, which today are probably worth about 2 million Canadian, which are sitting in our back pocket and which can be traded as and when we see the right time to do that. So So just in terms of background, for people who've been following the story will know that we've had multiple successes over the years. And I think obviously, as you probably tell your clients, one of the things is good projects, but it's also very, very important to have strong teams behind the projects. We've had a lot of success over the years. Our most recent one, 2017, we sold Mariana Resources, which had a very high grade gold copper discovery in Turkey called Hot Maden. Before then, I was CEO of a company called Extori Gold Mines, which had the Cerro Moro discovery in Argentina. We sold that to Yamana in 2012. And we can go back, through other cases as well. But really the sweet spot for us is the discovery, bringing resources to the table, and then pushing those projects through the mining studies. And what's actually happened the last two times with Mariana and also with Extori is the projects were so good that basically somebody basically took us out before we got to the point of building the mine. So for those who are following us, a lot of good history there. And also just to mention too that the current team of Capella is basically Mariana 2.0. We tried to keep as much of the old team together as we possibly could. So just a quick comment on massive sulfides, Kai, because we get a lot of questions on, people know Norway is an oil producing country. They just forgot that it was a major copper producer for many years. But what we do is we just show this map on the left, which without going into too much detail, just shows that when you do the geological reconstructions, the copper belt of Western Norway, and here we're talking about continental Norway, it continues south through what would be the UK and connects up with northeastern Canada. And of course, northeastern Canada has a lot of these massive sulfide deposits. So when we put it into that context, people understand why we actually have copper in Norway to begin with. And again, just keeping in mind, there's a long history here, 300 years of mining, these are just incredible deposits, which I'll talk about in a moment. So why do we like these massive sulfide deposits? Fundamentally, because they're high grade, they're very high value in terms of dollar per ton deposits. And of course, that gives you an awful lot of flexibility when you come to getting closer to production. Grade is king in this business. And the other thing too that, I do like to remind people, because these are old mining districts, there's an expression in our business, the best place to find a new mine is in the shadow of a head frame. And that's exactly what we have here. What we do see around both of the deposits we have in Norway, that these things occur in clusters, and we have lots of work to still do in terms of testing those deposits. And just a quick couple of comments on Norway. Again, people probably aren't too familiar with the political and economic landscape in Norway. Obviously, as I mentioned, Norway has a rich, history of mining from the 1600s. So this is nothing from, there's a lot of history here. And in the districts that we operate in, a lot of the people's, grandfathers operated the mines. So this is nothing new for people in the areas that we operate. Very good corporative tax rates. Very cheap energy. There's a lot of pluses for being in Norway. And just to add a comment there on the permitting, there is a mine in northern Norway called Nussir, which has now just received all its permits, and it is in production. Well, basically, they're in the stage of beginning construction here in the second half of this year. So it does show that the permitting system is working. Nussir, of course, is the first cab off the rank in terms of the new group of mines coming forward, but it does show that permitting is working very well. And of course, the other thing to add to is fantastic infrastructure. We're not in the back end of Africa here. There's just awesome infrastructure here in terms of general infrastructure, plus the old mining infrastructure from the old deposits. So Løkken, just a couple of words here very quickly. So Løkken, as I mentioned, we have about a 150 square kilometer land holding here around the old mine. The old mine extended about 4 kilometers long. It was actually a very big deposit, daylighted on the east and ended up a kilometer at depth. It was 4 kilometers in length, so it was a very big deposit for its time and in fact for its class. One of the key things to mention here is that, this is the 4 kilometers long, which the deposit was. But we have all of these other satellite deposits to look at, and there's so much to do in this district. And these satellite deposits have seen very little work, and we're working those up now to bring those into targeting as quickly as we can. Now, this is just actually a 3D model of the mineralization at Løkken. So again, it sort of highlights this. It was a massive tabular body that was 4 kilometers in length. The thing that I do like to draw people's attention to is the fact that the outcrop on surface, the discovery outcrop where they found copper on this thing, is really unspectacular. I mean, any geologist looks at that and says, Yeah, okay, that's kind of interesting, but you would never think that it opened up at depth into something of the size and magnitude that we have here at Løkken. So I guess one of the key things here is we need to keep our eyes open as we're exploring this belt. Even small occurrences here could be significant in terms of opening up at depth to some of these bigger deposits. So we need to look at these with a very good eye. Sullide is the second deposit or area that we're looking at, and I'm actually calling in from Roth now, so I'm basically in this area as we speak. Essentially, what we have here is we have a 250 square kilometer package. We basically have this 20-kilometer long belt of massive sulfides, which basically extend just along where I'm moving the cursor there. We have two former mines here, one which was Skillingdal, the other one which was Sullide. We know these are high-grade deposits and lots of potential to still grow. And right now we have people on the ground. We're doing a lot of work in terms of just fine-tuning some of the targets that we have already defined, and again getting ready to go into the drilling phase in terms of defining drill holes, going through permitting, and then moving on to drilling. And this just gives you an idea here of the potential at Sullide. The photograph on the left is an example of an outcrop that's never been drilled. This was sampled. That channel sample there is from a year ago, and it runs 2.2% copper. And this thing's just sitting there on surface and never been drilled. And it really just highlights that in the mid-80s, when they shut everything down in Norway, they literally just walked away and just things have been dormant here for the last 40 years. So that's sort of the copper side, and obviously we could spend a lot more time on that, but I'll just give you a quick couple of words here on the Swedish gold project as well. So as I mentioned, we are in this southern gold line area. It's a 500 square kilometer property. It's a very large land holding in the area of Favourable and also the Sullide mine. So this is an area where we know there's gold mineralization. What we have on our property, on the right-hand side, you can see we have these boulder fields. We know that we have gold in these boulders sitting on surface, and now our task is to systematically sweep our way through the projects and basically identify the targets for drilling. So the summer program here really is going to be focused on completing this systematic sweep through the property, most of which will be around auger drilling and also some geophysics, with the view to getting targets identified, properly defined and ready for drill either in the winter or next year sometime. So I guess we only have a minute or so left. So basically what I'll do is I'll just summarize what are the value drivers for the company in 2021. So as I say, even if I include the Canadian projects for a second, but we have in total 5 projects that are active at the moment, 2 of which the Canadian ones are in joint venture partner hands. But so our focus remains on Scandinavia in terms of the things that we manage on a day-to-day basis. But in total, we have 3 gold projects, 2 copper. I particularly am a great fan of the high-grade copper deposits in Norway. I think these massive sulfide deposits are fantastic projects for companies of our size. They have the potential to be company makers. And because of the high grades, you don't need a lot of tons to make these things work once you get to the mining stage. So we see a lot of potential there in terms of moving these projects forward. So and then as I mentioned, so basically the plan is to have 4 projects drilling before the end of the year, the 2 Canadian projects, and all going well, we also expect to be drilling on the 2 Norwegian projects come the end of the year. The Swedish project, I think, will probably it needs a good summer of work this year, and then next year, I think we're in a better position to drill that. And of course, the shareholdings, which are extra upside for shareholders here. So that's sort of the portfolio overall, Kai.
Great, Eric, fantastic. Right on time. One last question. Can you expand on the planned drill program in Norway? Do you have any more details for us? You're saying by the end of the year. Feels like 5 months, feels like tomorrow. What's planned?
Yeah. So in terms of the drilling, so what's going to happen, Kai? So with the work we're doing on the ground now, particularly at Sullide, so that'll be the first cab off the rank in terms of drill targets. We probably have another month to go before we complete all of our sort of in the field work, and we have teams on the ground at the moment. We should have all those results in a month. Then the permitting should take us about 2 months, and then after that, any point in time after that, we should be able to push the button on drilling. So that basically is sort of a time frame. So from once we have all the results, we have at least probably about 2 months of permitting, and then we're ready to kick off.
Fantastic, and no issues starting in January or December with drilling, weather-wise.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, it's the best time to drill, Kai, because when it's in the winter, of course, everything's frozen. It's a bit tougher for the drillers. They do freeze, but at least the ground is frozen, so you do less damage to the ground. So actually, people prefer to work the summers, collect data, and drill in the winter.
Excellent. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. We do have to move on in the program. Presentation will be available for review, obviously.